Men är Umberto Eco en litteraturens schackspelare, en manipulatör? Eller har han en litterär berättarlust? Stephen Farrelly träffade honom igår i Stockholm där han gav intervjuer.
Gummesons konstgalleri i Stockholm. Den rumänske konstnären Petru Russu visar upp sina tolkningar av romanen Foucaults Pendel för Umberto Eco. Och intresset är förstås stort i huvudstaden för den litterära globetrotter. Umberto Eco är semiotiker, en professor i Bologna i Italien. Det vill säga han ägnar sig åt avancerad teckentolkning och studier i hur romaner är uppbyggda. Han har skrivit ett antal essäer om olika masskulturella fenomen. James Bond och Stålmannen för att ta ett par exempel. I och med romandebuten med medeltidsdeckaren Rosens namn i början av 80-talet blev han en masskulturellt fenomen själv. Och hans andra roman Foucaults Pendel var en given succé när den kom ut i Italien för drygt ett år sedan. Där har den redan sålt i 1,5 miljon exemplar. Och den engelska översättningen ligger tvåa på bestsellerlistan i USA. Foucaults Pendel handlar om 3 förlagsredaktörer som ger ut ockult litteratur och som konstruerar en plan över hur diverse ockulta sällskap i närmare 1000 år konspirerat för att ta över världen. Och den berömda pendeln som 1800-talsfysikern Léon Foucault använde för att bevisa att jorden roterar, den svänger olycksbådande romanen igenom i Teknikmuseet Conservatoire des Arts et Métiers i Paris. Eco är en noggrann författare. Han konstruerade Rosens namn i 1 år innan han började skriva den. Sammanlagt tog det honom 3 år att få den färdig. Och Foucaults Pendel ägnade han ännu mera tid.
A little longer because as far as I remember I got the first idea of the book in 81. The Rose was published in Italy in the end of the 80s. And in 81 I started to have I remember that in 82 I went to the Conservatoire of Arts et Métiers in Paris to see again the Pendulum. And I started writing the first chapters only at the end of 84. So it means that 82, 83, 84, I was turning around this idea. I remember I went to Provoke and all those places I mentioned. I made some other trip, and I didn't want to start because I was afraid that I was writing a new novel just because the first one had a certain success and everybody was expecting it from me. And so I tried to delay it and to go very, very slowly. But at the end of 84, I was 3 months in New York. I was alone, and I started writing the first 100 pages. Then I showed them to a very, very, very close friend in Italy, and he told me, that's shit. And I threw them away. And I started again.
So it took you all in all 7 or 8 years, isn't it?
8 years, let's say 8 years.
Well, I understand that you had to build up a whole library on occultism as well to be able to write this book on Kabbalah and so forth.
Well, let's say that I had at home since 20 years one shelf of curious books about that. It means that I was always a little curious about this kind of things. But this shelf in 2-3 years then became 2,000 books, and so a whole wall. And so it means that in those 8 years I have a little enriched my personal library on those matters.
Mm. One of the main themes of the novel is the story of the Knights Templars and their inheritors, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons. Where did you get the idea to base a novel on these ancient sects and orders?
The novel is not about that. I mean, if I was obliged to summarize the subject of my novel, I should say, is about the paranoia of interpretation. So I could have set the novel, I don't know, in a group of nuclear physicists trying to find out cold fusion, or in a group of Roman philologists trying to interpret a manuscript. Okay, the fact that it took place in a publishing house dealing with occultism made the whole story a little more Romanesque. I mean, the stuff was hotter and more interesting. But I repeat, it's not a novel on occultism. It is a novel about a certain madness in over-interpreting the world. And occultism is the instrument I use. Maybe because I realized years ago that a lot of those young people that were in the 68 Marxist and revolutionary, when at a certain point, when they became disappointed by what happened, were going in that direction. And in many bookstores, as well in America as well as in Italy and in Europe, I frequently detect that those shelves that once were devoted to Che Guevara, third world political issues, step by step were occupied by Age of Aquarium, New Age, Eastern religion, tarots. So there was something interesting in this escape toward the mystery, toward the occult. And that should have also a political and moral and ideological explanation. And in this sense, I was also interested in this aspect.
Mm. Critics have pointed out the resemblances between Foucault's Pendulum and Spielberg, Indiana Jones, those films. Do you find that strange, or can you see the point?
Well, there are very immediate, apparent, evident points that Spielberg used some elements of this literature in the first Indiana Jones, the quest for the Ark, and so, because obviously I think that Spielberg was doing what I did, looking in this junk literature, and then there is in common, I like very much Spielberg just for this, for his ability to use quotations of popular literature with ironic intentions. And there is an essay of mine published also in English that it will be collected in my new book of essays next year at Indiana University Press, and the title will be The Limits of Interpretation, in which I analyze certain scenes of the two Indiana Jones, exactly to see in which way Spielberg works with inverted commas in quotations. But I think that this is a feature common to a lot of contemporary narrative, what it has been called postmodernism, citationism, and so on and so forth. So it is a general atmosphere, is a general climate, more than a direct connection.
You as a writer, you take it a step further, don't you? I mean, you make it more obvious to the reader that you use these quotations.
Okay, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope that the reader will be immediately aware of the fact that there is a quotation, even though sometimes readers are going very quick. I read an article on a Spanish Catholic newspaper in which he said, this book is blasphemous, is blasphematory, because it says that Jesus was not crucified and Maria Magdalena and became the King of France. oh my God, I say, can I say such a stupidity? Obviously, there is one of my character that among the various hypotheses makes also this, but if my reader turned the pages, would have discovered that immediately after I put there the quotation of a real book, really published, in which people maintained that. So it was an ironical quotation of a
Holy Grail.
Yes, the book on the Holy Grail. So in the same way in which Flaubert in Bouvard et Pécuchet mentioned all the possible sillinesses and stupidities of a certain popular culture. But you see, sometimes there are readers that don't identify the inverted commas and the ironical quotation and take it as an assertion of the author. Okay, they are the normal risks of this job.
Speaking of films, by the way, there was a screen version made of The Name of the Rose. Do you anticipate a screen version of Foucault's Pendulum as well?
I told my publisher, who is receiving a lot of requests from all over the world, that my position is that, at least for the next 20 years, I don't want to discuss this point. First, I don't think it is possible to make a film out of the Foucault's Pendulum without reducing it to a Vincent Price horror movie. Second, I think that it's dangerous for an author to have a film out of his own book immediately after, because there are a lot of people then arrive to the book through the film. And in this sense, the film, independently of the value of the film, acts as a filter, as a distortion of the interpretation. It is different when you make a film out of a very old book that everybody already knows. So it's possible that in 20 years, myself or my kids would accept it. But for the moment, I would refrain from.
Were you disappointed with the screen version of The Name of the Rose?
It's not this, the problem. It is that every film is an interpretation of the book. And as far as a good film, as much as it is a good film, as much it is a strong interpretation. So to find then people who read your book through a previous interpretation is embarrassing for the author. So I prefer people read the book. Then maybe later, after my death, I don't know.
Now, being a mass communication phenomenon, excuse me, but that's in a way I find you are now, being a novel writer with, say, it's 7 million books sold of The Name of the Rose. Has this affected your fiction, your way of writing? You know that the next book you'll write will be more or less an immediate success.
Yes, I knew, and that was the reason why I expected 8 years to finish it, that with the success of the first one, if I had taken the directory, the phone book, and copied it and published it, at least for the beginning, there would have been a lot of people ready to buy it. That gave me a great sense of responsibility, because the other temptation was to make something very easy in order to keep going with the success. And that explains why I wrote the first 2 chapters as very hard chapters, in order to keep imprudent readers away. Then, at least everybody says that when one passes through the first 2 chapters and arrives to the third one, the atmosphere is a little more friendly. But anyway, yes, the success obliged me to be more rigorous, and maybe a little more cruel with my reader.
Well, there was a big hullabaloo last year when Foucault's Pendulum was to be published in Italy. Reports came all the time. So the summarizing the plot and all that,
Yes.
and you even got more or less accused of trying to plant these reports so as to increase interest and get more publicity.
Yes. So I spent 3 months doing what I think few authors have done in their life, asking newspapers, please don't review, please don't review this book. And at the end, everybody believed that it was a plot. I had reviews also by people who never saw the book. So they invented the reviews. And it was impossible to escape this. Probably I committed a mistake because if 3 months before I gave copies of the manuscripts to everybody, then there would have been no curiosity. But I myself and the publisher, we made the mistake, say, well, it's better to keep the press silent until the book is out, so don't show the book to anybody. And that aroused the curiosity. So as a student of mass media, I made a tragical mistake. But I didn't think at that moment that this event was so important. Technically speaking, all the error was to prepare the book for October. So the previous months were July, August, and September, which are empty months in which the press has nothing to say. If there is no Third World War, that probably if the book was prepared for March and April, there would have been no such a curiosity from January to April. But that was another mistake. Preparing the book for October provoked this summer curiosity of the press that for me was very disturbing. It acted as a boomerang effect because, and I understand very well that a lot of people, when the book was out, said, oh, I wanted to read it because they spoke too much about it. I would have done that same thing. So it was, for many, a natural reaction. So the book was bought by a lot of people who were absolutely uninterested in it, but couldn't resist the temptation, and wasn't read by people I would have liked. They did, and maybe I meet some of them now, and one year after, finally, they read it. And I understand this sort of feeling, because I would do, I promise, the same thing in a similar case.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, you learned a lesson for your next release. Are you actually working on a new novel now?
I am working in this moment on scholarly matters, and since it seems that when I write a novel every 10 years, I think it's a premature question.
But you started writing Foucault's Pendulum, and we started working on it quite early, as we
Yes,
said.
but
So.
I published the Pendulum only 1 year ago, so let me understand what happens. The most obvious answer, I have not time to answer this question because I am too busy to answer all the other questions during the interviews.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Eco.